Mark, you mentioned counter programming. Have we talked about Fox doing their marquee game at noon? Have we talked
We
about the
have
whole thing?
not. And wow, Jake. Whoa. Hey now. So I will take care. You guys start the discussion on the
Okay.
noon decision by Fox to highlight the games at noon, the better games, and move them as a counter programming strategy, and I'll take care of the live stream.
Yeah, what I'm interested in seeing is, will they actually do it? Because Steve, we've got the Nebraska game, which we all assume is going to be a night game. Fox, if they get it, they want to make their marquee games at noon to be the big show at that time, which I think is wise. It also leads. They've got their pregame show that they want to lead into that, so it's smart in that way. I'm just not sure that it's actually going to happen, because I assume Nebraska is going to be at night. There's other games at night. I think it's an interesting strategy, and I like it. I prefer noon games because I get home sooner. I'm a little selfish like that. But I don't know. Do you think it works? Do you? It's new. I mean, remember 10 years ago, the move was towards primetime, and we loved it because we didn't get as many primetime games as we would like. You think back to the Stanford win over USC with Jim Harbaugh. I think that was maybe 2007. That was one of the rare night games on ABC, maybe. And then it's become a norm, and now you're kind of going back the other way. What's old is new again, and we'll see if it works.
Yeah, it was around 2005 or 2006 that ABC made that conscious decision that, and obviously they had basically given their sports division over to ESPN, which was all owned by Disney at the time, and basically co-opted that, and ESPN took over ABC Sports. And the decision was made, a few years after that whole transition, that they were going to make Saturday night a college football night. And they had the lion's share of the television rights for most of the conferences. Obviously, the SEC primary game has always been on CBS just about every Saturday. There were some exceptions if they had U.S. Open tennis or whatever back in the day. But by and large, ABC had the pick of the litter from the other conferences and could put a quality primetime game on there. Well, what's happened as we've crept forward 10 or 15 years, the landscape has changed. There's been realignment in college football, and Fox has dived into this thing with both feet, and now they own rights on some Pac-12, some Big 12, and Big 10. I don't think they have anything with ACC or SEC, nothing of note. And so they've got those three conferences, and they can cobble together a pretty nice schedule. They're actually paying the top dollar for the Big 10, and they get the first pick most weeks over ESPN and ABC, which still gets some Big 10 games. But what I think Fox's problem in my studying their coverage of college football is who is picking these games. They have put some of the worst games in prime time. They had a BYU Washington game last year or something. They have Penn State this year, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, but week 2 or 3, I think they're playing a MAC team in prime time. I mean, I'm dumbfounded. I guess they're playing Buffalo. Maybe it's Buffalo that week, or which, Buffalo had a great team last year, whatever. But Fox's selection of games is why they didn't draw worth a crap in prime time. And the other problem that they have is they have to go dark for a couple weeks in October when they have to go World Series, and they have to go probably League Championship Series in prime time on Saturday night. And so whatever momentum you gain from having early season games in prime time, you lose that in October. People, see baseball on there and don't assume that, Fox isn't showing any more night games. So I don't know. I think that they got some, just some growing pains that they're working through. I think Nebraska, Ohio State, provided both teams are undefeated, would draw a huge number in that week. And I think that's what it's all about, is drawing numbers and getting viewers to watch your telecasts. And I think Fox has struggled with that up to this point. Now, obviously, the Ohio State-Michigan game was huge for them. Last year, I don't know if they televised the Maryland game the week before, but the way that game went down to the wire, maybe it was on ESPN. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, there was, at least for the ESPN and ABC at times, there was a thing where they wanted to condition Ohio State fans leading into the Michigan game that Ohio State plays at noon so that you don't miss the Michigan game, or to kind of, condition you that way. So at any rate, I think that Fox is trying like heck to build up its coverage of college football, touting Urban Meyer now on the morning show from 11 to 12. They're going up against what's had a, a 24-year head start with We're Coming to Your City, the game day crew. People watch that show religiously, or listen. You can even listen to it on the radio, on ESPN radio, as you're driving to the game. So Fox is fighting an uphill battle here, and there's no competition on the West Coast in the 9 o'clock hour, or rather the noon hour right now. So it is a good time slot to put a good national game in there. Texas, Oklahoma usually does a pretty good number in that spot on whatever network it's on. And so, I just think that, again, it's all about getting viewership and getting numbers to watch these college football games. Pac-12 was debating about putting together a noon Eastern time schedule. And, the only thing I came back with on that is you've got Utah and you've got Colorado, who are in the Mountain Time Zone, and maybe they could play some 11 a.m. local games like the Big 12 teams sometimes do, play 11 o'clock local time, so they can be on at noon Eastern time. For them, it would be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. But you can't schedule a game anywhere in this country and expect thousands of people to get to it if you play it any earlier than 11 a.m., because it is a struggle getting to and from. They got attendance problems now. Start playing the games at 10 and 11 a.m. and you just see how many people don't show up.
So basically we get a situation, I'm thinking back, and I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to scores and stats, and also what TV networks handled what games. And so for me, being right, I think Steve and I are right there on the age line, right next to each other. And ABC always had the Ohio State Michigan game noon every year. And then in 1982, it switched to CBS. CBS got into the college football game. Was a big NFL network, of course, got into the college football game. Brent Musburger, Eric Parsekian, those guys jumped into Big Ten football. 1982, it was that big Gary Williams game, Tim Spencer game, Steve, that you remember in the rain at Ohio Stadium against Michigan in 82. And then CBS had the game for about 5 years. And then the Earl Bruce game at Ann Arbor was when ABC took it back over in 87. Then they had it forever up until the win at Michigan 2 years ago in 17 would have been the first game that Fox had, the Ohio State Michigan game. And as I understand, and I may have this slightly off, the way it works is that Fox has kind of overtaken ESPN in regards to their status in the Big Ten contract, and they get that first selection. So that's always going to be Ohio State Michigan. That's why they're going to have the game for the third consecutive year. Then ESPN/ABC takes that second slot, which I believe they must have taken Michigan Penn State last year, because then Fox took Ohio State and Penn State, which turned out to be the second best rated game of the Big Ten schedule. I just saw somebody posted on Twitter just the other day, the top 10 rated games in the college football season. Ohio State Michigan game, that was the number one regular season game by far. Wasn't even close, at like 13 to 14 million homes. So multiply that by like 2.5 and you get your number of viewers. And the Penn State Ohio State game was in the top 10. And so there was a misstep there, because Fox also got that Super Ohio State. No. That was 2 years ago. The game in Columbus was the Fox game, the 39-38 game. Yeah, that was a late night ABC game, the game that the Buckeyes pulled out at Happy Valley. So I don't know what that must have been the number one ABC selection.
Yeah, this year, it seems to me, just looking at the schedule that we've already got of primetime and whatever, that the number 2 pick for, if you presume ESPN, ABC got the second weekend. I think they went Notre Dame, Michigan that first weekend in November, I believe, or maybe the last weekend in October. I don't know. Whenever it is, I think that if you look at the schedule, it's already marked ABC or ESPN. And so to me, that's the one they've earmarked for their, and it makes perfect sense. And it'll be in prime time, I would think. So I think it's up against World Series on Fox. I could be off on my weeks, but yeah, because Ohio State's got a good game that day too. Wisconsin, and you would think maybe that would have been a prime time game, but there's no slot for it if Notre Dame, Michigan is in prime time. Maybe OSU would be 3:30 or noon or whatever. But I think from a fan standpoint, people like the 3:30 games because you can get there and set your tailgate up anytime between 9 and 12. You can drive in comfortably and have no traffic problem at Ohio State pretty much between 9 and 12. After that, it gets a little dicey trying to get there for a 3:30 game. And you can actually enjoy your tailgate and watch the first round of games at your tailgate till about 2:30, then pack up and head in and watch the band and everything and get ready for the game. The noon games are just, there are people who attend these games who live within a 5-mile radius of Ohio State, the students certainly, but most of the people coming to the games are driving in from the suburbs or Cleveland or Cincinnati or Dayton. And for them to get to a noon game is it's a major undertaking because you've got to get out of bed, get your stuff together, and get on the road by 8:30 or 9 o'clock, or you're going to be sitting in traffic, and it's no fun. So, it just – and then when you get there, there's no time to hang around and do a whole lot because by 11:15, you want to be inside the stadium. So,
yeah. I've been plagued with some kind of a sports watching defect or bad gene or something because I tend to enjoy watching marginal sports events. So when everybody else is watching World Cup soccer final, I'm like, well, I was watching the Brewers Pirates game or whatever, or, whatever case, I love the noon Minnesota Purdue games. I love watching that stuff. So I love the noon football games, but obviously I'm not at the event most of the time. That's a rare occasion, like 1 or 2 trips out per year to actually be at the stadium.
Invariably, the noon games produce some of the best drama because, like Ohio State at Maryland last year, Ohio State showed up and wasn't ready to play, and they were the heavy favorite. Maryland just barreled them, and it took a Herculean effort in the second half for Ohio State to pull that game out. Every week, all season long, there'll be a major upset in the noon window, and you'll say, God, I didn't see that coming. And it could be anything. It could be, it could be Minnesota versus Maryland, and one figures to be much better than the other, but it just happens. And that's what makes those noon games so much fun is that, a lot of times the better team doesn't win, and it creates some drama for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mark. I like the noon games. That's why for Ohio State's 3:30 games, I'll be in the press box at noon so I can watch football. It's like the worst part about this job is you can't watch as much football as you'd like because you're busy watching football. And so you get to the press box and you have a TV there and you watch whatever happens. And usually it's going to be something interesting. And if it's not, you've got other stuff to do. There's free food. There's mingling. There's, iced coffee.
If they don't have the game that you want to watch up on the screen, we're now so sophisticated and we've got high-speed internet. You can watch whatever you want on your computer. And it's been a tradition every year and about every week. If we're playing at 3:30, about 3:25, you've got 10 people huddled around a computer to watch somebody miss a field goal or something, or make a field goal to win a game or something. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, going nuts. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and you'll have one side of the press box might be a couple seconds ahead on their computer than the other side, so you'll hear the reactions before it gets to your computer.
No!
Yeah.
To your point, Tony, I know 6 years covering the SEC and going to the games every week, then people would ask me, the next day to comment on the Arkansas-Auburn game and the Florida-Tennessee game, and I'd be at the Mississippi State-Alabama game, and I'd explain, I typically wouldn't, but it'd be running through my head. Well, We had a 3:30 game in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Well, 2:30 Central Time. Well, we had to be at the game like 2 hours early. We had to drive an hour. We had to drive through traffic. We had to load up the gear. We're getting at the station at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. We're traveling. We're at the game. The game's over at 7 o'clock at night. You're going into the locker room for interviews. You're going to the post game. You're not getting out of there until 9 o'clock at night. You're rushing back to the station, editing highlights. You're not sitting there watching football. And it's 11 o'clock at night, and you've tied up 15 hours into one football game, and you're supposed to be an expert on everybody else that's playing.
Yep. And then, after the Ohio State game, we'll go to the post game and get back to the press box around halftime of the next game and get to watch a little bit of that while you're working, and then try to get home for the 8 o'clock games. Or, if you're playing late at night or you're playing in the 8 o'clock game, forget about it. You're there. And not to complain, but Steve will tell you the road games, the night road games are just
no fun.
No fun. Even though they're fun to be at,
well,
they're no fun afterwards.
If we wanted to leave Penn State let's say you get your interviews done, you wanted to go back to your hotel to work, there you need an Army helicopter to get out of there because there's nowhere to go. The roads are so backed up. Even with the freeway, it still is difficult to get out of there after a game. Like, we'll look out the press box at 1 a.m. and there's still a line of taillights out there. And the game's been over for an hour and a half and people are still stuck in traffic. So
and most people have to stay like an hour away.
Yeah.
Those are the closest available hotels.
Yeah.